I heard people talking about wanting to reach out to Tea Party people, and I think it's important to talk to everybody. We're nonpartisan organization. We think this is an evidence-based, common-sense solution. But I want to remind you that we're already in the majority. So I feel like maybe our priority is to get those who already support this to be more vocal and visible. I was looking... I'm going out to Madison on Wednesday. I'm really excited. So I didn't mean to be rude, but I was looking at my BlackBerry a little bit because we're in the midst of writing our press release and organizing the actions that are going to go on out there. And someone sent me some photos of what's happening right now in Madison, and there was a sign that said, "We are the no longer silent majority." And that's what we have to remember, that we are already in the majority. So how do we get people to be no longer silent? And I think that Ray and others hit it right on the head. The people are already with us, but the leaders are not. So we've got to go to the local level. The reason that Resolution 34 passed at the AFL-CIO convention was because the locals demanded it. They had over 70 resolutions asking for that. The most that they've ever received on any other issue was like 24. So it was something that they could not ignore. But now getting them to actually be active on Resolution 34 is going to, again, mean that the locals are going to have to demand that resources are put into promoting single payer. I've heard some talk about, the Democratic Party and wanting to work within the Democratic Party. I have to agree that both the Republican and Democratic parties are corporate-controlled parties. I think another thing that was so telling during the reform process was that, we had groups like Progressive Democrats of America who worked really hard to elect progressive Democrats, many of whom, probably most of whom, ran on single-payer platforms. But once they got into office, what they wanted no longer mattered, because it was leadership. And really what was happening in Congress, it was so mind-boggling. It was coming down from the top. It was coming from the White House. It was coming from the leadership in the House and the Senate, telling people, what they could and couldn't say, and using the games that they have and the power that they have to influence even those who tried to resist. We saw it at the end with Congressman Kucinich, who was completely strong-armed into having to support the legislation. So it's a broken political process, and putting somebody who supports what we want into that broken process just means that they're going to, if they're beholden to the party, they're going to follow what the party tells them to do. And so that's why I think it's so important that we be independent. As a movement, we have to be independent and not put our allegiance to any political party, even including the Greens. But as far as electing candidates, independent candidates are really important because they're not beholden to the corporate party. So we're always, there's been such a temptation over the years for independent parties to, when push comes to shove, support the Democrats. And that's gotten us nowhere. So I think it's really important that we not buy into the argument of lesser evilism. I tell people will say, well, if we don't vote for the Democrats, then we're going to end up with a Republican. Well, guess what? We're going to have to do that. It's going to have to happen a couple of times before either the Democrats disappear or they get it and actually do what people think that they're supposed to do, what I guess they say they're supposed to do is support people. But yeah, so at least when there's a Republican in office, you get the mobilizations like you have out in Wisconsin. If the Democrats had been doing that, it would have been much more subtle, much more silent. People really wouldn't have recognized it and mobilized. Look at what Obama has done, in terms of war policy and the financial policy and healthcare and everything. So I say, we've got to end this kind of race to the bottom that's happening in this country, and we've got to do that by mobilizing ourselves and getting ourselves together. So there's some exciting work at the state level. The national bills have been reintroduced. We're building coalitions. I try to remind people that health is only a small part of our health is really determined by access to health care, about 10% of our health. So access to health care is important, but 90% is all the other things like having adequate education, having a place to live in an environment that's safe, having access to affordable, healthy food, clean water, living wages, being treated with dignity and respect. These are all the things that have an impact on our health. So really, what we need in this society is a broad social and economic justice movement, and that's, I agree with others. I think Hugh spoke about, showing up at other events.